All right. Hi, I am Olivia Tyler. I'm here with Mario Agosto. It's Friday, March 12th, 2021. We are talking about the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholarship Program as part of a project with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Thank you for being here, Mario. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So, could you tell me a little bit about your college experience, maybe the application process to UF, what that was like?
Sure. I actually grew up right down the road from Gainesville. For the majority of my life, I grew up in Ocala. So I always knew about UF, never really understood the camaraderie behind it. Back home, you were either an FSU fan or a Gator fan. Thankfully, I chose to be a Gator. But the college process was a bit interesting for me because I did the international baccalaureate program in high school. And so I always knew that I was going to hopefully end up going to school somewhere. And I preferred in the state of Florida. But when I looked at UF, I didn't think that I'd be able to get in. So for me, naturally, I just wasn't going to apply. I had my heart set on USF over in Tampa. I actually ended up going to campus for a campus tour and visited one of my friends who was a freshman at the time, and he sat down with me and sort of convinced me to apply. He's like, this is the best place that you could go to college, and he's like, you may not necessarily understand it now, but it's about the traditions, and it's about the fact that you're going to be sitting in these same classrooms as like so many other great Gators have, and going to football games and going to these athletic events um, that are the reason behind that camaraderie. So he convinced me. I applied. I somehow got in, and then what was even more interesting than that was I was notified that I was eligible for the Match in Florida Opportunity Scholars Program, and so in the beginning I thought it was kind of too good to be true. But over time, thankfully, I received the MFOS scholarship and I made my way to campus. I actually started in Summer B.
All right. Summer B is a great time to start, get
Yeah.
accustomed to campus. You said that it was your friend who kind of encouraged you to apply here. How was your family and their relationship to you going to college? Was there any support, any feelings there, especially in IB? I know that's a rigorous like course load, so seems like you were already planning to go, but what was that like?
Well, it's a bit of an interesting combination because I'm the first in my family to go to college. So although I was getting preparation from the IB program and others that were around me in that aspect, from my parents directly, they were encouraging me, and it was expected that I was going to go to college. But in terms of the actual help of how to get there, yeah, unfortunately, that just wasn't their strong suit. But yeah, it was definitely an expectation for me to go to school. I think that the concern was the cost. And so I remember when I got into UF, I told my parents, and they were both really excited. But immediately for me, my concern was, well, how am I going to pay for this? The thought of having to go in debt was kind of scary. My parents didn't have the resources to support me through college, so that was my immediate concern. And I remember to this day, my dad just said, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. Whether I have to take on another job, or whatever it is, just go to school. This is your dream school." And we'll figure it out as you go. And that kind of gave me a confidence booster because I didn't really know how I was going to figure it out, and I didn't have MFOS yet. But I knew that my parents were supporting me in something that they also probably didn't know how we were going to figure it out. But college was really the reason why my family and I moved to Florida. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I moved when I was 8 years old. Um,
Wow.
and the primary factor for moving was just so that I could attain a better education, and have a better future for myself and for my family. So, school was always number one. Even when I was playing sports, I played baseball and I did a bunch of other things kind of on the side. My parents always said, well, just make sure that school comes first. So thankfully, I always had the support from them, and I also was pretty close to home, being that I'm the last one from my parents. So they were able to come up and just drive the 45 minutes to come and visit me on campus, and it worked out well for all of us.
That is really good. I guess Ocala is, I'm from Sanford, so a little bit
Okay.
further south, but my
Yeah.
parents are kind of the same way, come up like once a month. It's
Yeah.
pretty good distance. And you mentioned that it was always your expectation that school comes first. It's great to have that support from your family, but was there any kind of pressure on you in college and like choosing a major or doing well, anything like that?
I'd say that there was definitely pressure to do well, but I realized over time it was less pressure from my family and more pressure just from myself,
Mhm.
because my family always had high expectations for me, just growing up, and I always knew that there was a lot of pressure because we did move kind of for my education and for my future. So that was a lot of pressure to begin with, but as I got older, I realized that the majority of that pressure I was just applying on myself. I just didn't want to disappoint anyone. So yeah, there was definitely some pressure, but in terms of specific major or anything like that, again, because neither of my parents had gone to college, there was never the pressure of, well, you have to be a business major, or you have to study this, or you have to study that. It was just more of, just make sure that your grades are where they need to be. Make sure that you're not falling behind. If others are getting internships, then you should also get internships. But my folks didn't even really know what an internship was, and I didn't really either until I got to college and I saw other folks who were talking about, oh yeah, for this summer I'm doing this, and this summer I'm doing that, and I'm like, huh, I should probably do something for the summer too. But actually, I majored in criminology and law, because I was interested in going to law school. Um, Growing up, I figured that I wasn't really that good at science, so I didn't want to be a doctor. But I'm pretty good at sort of like logical reasoning and arguing and all of that. So I figured, well, law school seems interesting, but for me, I also knew that law school was going to be pricey. So I said, well, let me study law in undergrad and see if I enjoy it, and if I do, then I'll go to law school. But I was a bit hesitant to go to law school without knowing exactly what I was going to do. So I was focused on law school. I had a couple of like pre-law internships. I actually took my LSAT. I had letters of recommendation in, and I ended up deciding not to go to law school for a few different reasons. But I think that, going back to that pressure question, there was never necessarily pressure for me to become a lawyer from my parents, but once I kind of had set that expectation, and they were always following up with it. And when I really started to think about, do I really want to be a lawyer? What type of law would I want to practice? I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I did want to go to law school for the experience. And again, back to the opportunity cost and having to pay for it out of pocket. I just decided that at the moment, I didn't want to go straight into law school right after undergrad. So I ended up just staying for another year and getting my master's in real estate finance. And although it may seem like a complete twist, I was actually, real estate was in my family a little bit. My mother was a realtor, and my dad kind of had his real estate investments growing up, nothing really serious. And while I was in school, I also kind of had my real estate investments on the side. And that's what I really enjoyed. Before class, after class, any free time that I had, I was just researching real estate, learning more about it. But for me, I always thought it would just be something that would stay on the side as an investment. While I was a lawyer, then I would go and invest in real estate. But I realized that when I didn't want to go to law school, I said, well, let me go to school for this real estate thing and see how the big players do it. How can you make a career out of this business? So I stayed for another year, and I said, if I don't like it, then my LSAT score is still good for a few more years. I can definitely go back. But if I do like it, then then I can kind of move forward with it.
Yeah. So you ended up liking it. Is that the career
Yeah.
you have now?
Yeah, I did end up liking it. I have been working in commercial real estate since I graduated. I actually started my job while I was still in school. My graduation was in May, and I accepted my job in January, but I started on a remote basis as a consultant. So any free time that I had, I was working. And then 2 weeks after graduation, I came down and started working full time. I'm based out of Boca Raton.
Oh, wow. It's
So
beautiful there.
I'm down in South Florida, and I've been here for about 2 years now.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of circling back to the MFOS theme, how do you think that being a part of that program changed like your college experience? Was there any sense of community given to you? What were the biggest benefits, I guess?
Well, so MFOS changed my college experience entirely.
Mhm.
Um, I tell folks all the time that MFOS isn't a scholarship, but rather a full program. And the good thing that comes from that is just the support that you get. You know, when I was applying to UF and I was applying to other schools, they were offering scholarships, but it was just sort of a, hey, here's X amount of dollars, and now you only have to pay the difference. And that was great, but what I didn't realize until I got to UF and I started getting more involved with the MFOS program was there's a whole team of folks that are behind it, and really their job is to make sure that that you're successful as a student in whatever way you as a student define that, but they're there to support you. They teach you about your finances. They're there to talk with you about classes, to provide support for you. A lot of times, seeing that we're first generation students, the support, at least from family that has gone to college before, just isn't there. So folks that are in the program, like Leslie, who's the director, and Erica, who's an assistant director, and Richard, another assistant director, their door is always open. So I found that to be really beneficial. What MFOS really allowed me to do was not worry about how I was going to pay for school, because if I wasn't an MFOS scholar, then I would have more than likely taken up as many jobs as possible to pay my way through school. And so that freed up a little bit of my time. And I realized that with the flexibility that scheduling also offers, you could have classes only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you'd have a couple of days off during the week. So for me, that really allowed me to say, well, I have all this quote unquote free time. What can I do with it? So I started getting really involved. As soon as I hit campus freshman year, I started getting involved with student government. I got involved with the Hispanic Student Association, the Cicerones, just as many things as I could, for a couple of different reasons. One, I wanted to learn about myself as much as possible and grow as much as possible, both professionally and personally.
Mhm.
But I also wanted to give back as much as I could. I wanted to learn more about what being a leader was like, what that looked like, surrounding myself with other leaders. And once I got to a point where I felt comfortable, I wanted to get involved with these organizations on a leadership level and just give back. Right? I saw areas where the organization could grow, and I wanted to help grow it, to help it become more efficient, more effective. And so that's what I did. But if it wouldn't have been for MFOS, then I really don't think that I would have been able to have the privilege to have a little bit more time and become involved. MFOS just really kind of gave me freedom.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's exactly what they tell you as a freshman, to come in and get
Get
involved.
involved.
It's great that it gave you that time. When you were in these organizations, did you notice any difference between like your experience as like a first generation student and maybe other people, like even friends or people who lived near you in your dorms as maybe second, third, fourth generation students? Was there any difference in experience that you saw?
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of differences, and it took time for me to realize. But a great example is Greek life, right? When I was a freshman and I started to make friends, a lot of the kids who had who their parents had gone to UF were already kind of really focused on Greek life, and I had no idea what Greek life was. And so then I became a little bit interested until I found out how much it cost. And at that point, I was like, well, this maybe isn't for me at the moment. Whereas a lot of other folks just went forward with it and they weren't concerned about the cost. As an MFOS student, and even just as a first generation student in general, I gravitated towards having a close knit group of friends who were also kind of in the same camp as I was, because I found that our experiences were a lot. They were more similar than if I were talking to someone else who may be third generation or fourth generation. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because hopefully one day my children will be able to be Gators as well, and then that'll kind of continue the tradition. But there were a lot of differences, and there were just different times where they come to light. I think that having the struggles that I had growing up, one, I wouldn't change them for the world, because they've made me who I am, and the skills and lessons that I learned through those times are still applicable to this day, even in my job. But they become evident the more that you surround yourself with folks who aren't as similar to you. So a great example is when I was in graduate school, we had an advisory board of the program that was comprised of real estate professionals from all over the country, and they would fly in once a year for a retreat on campus. And at some point during that retreat, the students, us, which was about 35 at the time, 35, 40 students, were expected to give a 2-minute intro. So you'd have to go up on the stage, introduce yourself, talk about a little bit about yourself and what you've done, and also kind of where you hope to be. And it's a great opportunity to connect with those advisory board members, so they can learn about you and also see if they can help you in any way. And I remember that a few weeks prior, we had to really practice and understand what we were going to say. And I'd say the majority of those students that were in the program really struggled, but it wasn't because they were nervous or unprepared, but it was because they didn't necessarily know their story, because they never had to sit back and think about what they'd gone through or anything. So when they were being asked, hey, go up there for 2 minutes and just talk about you, talk about your story, talk about where you want to be. The majority of these kids were like, well, I played lacrosse, or I played soccer, or I played this, and I went to high school here, and then I got to college, and now I'm trying to do this. But then that ended up being like 30, 40 seconds, right? For me, I was like, hey, give me 5 minutes if you can. Because I think that being first gen and going through the experiences that I've gone through, it really teaches you to understand what you've gone through and be proud of who you are. So I was able to kind of just get up there and be honest, to talk about the fact that I am first gen, that I am an MFOS student, and what that translated into, and also why I enjoy real estate and where I'd like to go. So yeah, there's plenty of differences, but it also makes you appreciate others as well, because others have strengths and weaknesses that are vastly different from you, and it just all goes to how you grew up and really the things that you've done to this point.
Right. That is really interesting. We're kind of learning the elevator pitch thing right now, and it involves a little bit of that. And that was kind of the first time, like, I had to sit down and think, like, wow, What's my
Yep.
story? Do you think now, even in your professional life, is MFOS still part of your story? Like, is that something that you still like embrace and bring up in any situations?
Yeah. I MFOS will forever be a part of my story. MFOS was so pivotal to my college experience, and even beyond that, really, MFOS made me realize the impact of what being a first generation student really looks like. So yeah, that I talk about it to this day in job interviews. I bring up the fact that I'm first generation. I'm MFOS, and they ask me what's MFOS, and then I can tell them about MFOS. When it comes around to times like Giving Day and First Gen Day, for me it's important to give back. But I also try to play my part, and even where I work, I tell them, hey, we've got maybe 5 or 6 other folks here who also graduated from UF. And so I tell them, hey guys, it's Giving Day or it's First Gen Day. Can you support MFOS? And then they ask, what's MFOS? And so I tell them, and I educate others, because it's really important to know that I was just one of the many that were there that were MFOS, and after me there will be hundreds and hundreds and thousands more MFOS students, and it's important that while I can dedicate my time and a little bit of my money, that I'll do so to continue to have an effect on the program. And thankfully, while I was in grad school, I also served as a graduate assistant for MFOS. And after that, that's allowed me to also have a few different opportunities. I sit as the youngest member of the MFOS Leadership Council. And so, I continue to be involved with the program. So that's, it's hard to put it into words.
Mm-hmm.
But a good way to put it is just the fact that I'm forever indebted to the MFOS program. And at least for now, the way that I can kind of pay those debts is through my time. And hopefully in the future, then I'll be able to repay it monetarily.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think advocating for it is something so important, and just like spreading awareness about it, because even I honestly had no idea we had this at UF. And now that I know, it's so amazing. And I wish I would have known before.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about your role, like what the MFOS Leadership Council does?
Sure. So the MFOS Leadership Council is a board through the UF Foundation, and it's basically comprised of major donors and supporters of the program. And we get together, I want to say about 2 to 3 times a year, and really talk about the strategy behind MFOS, kind of where we are, where were we before, and also where are we going. And then we all really just brainstorm about how can we help the program get to where it needs to be. And really, I've been on the board, I want to say, for 2 years, 2 to 3 years now. Mm-hmm. The folks that are involved are just so passionate about MFOS and about giving back, that it's really cool being the youngest member, because we've got folks who are in their 40s and folks who are in their 70s, and they all are anything from lawyers to tech guys and all sorts of different folks who have different experiences, but they're all just really passionate about giving back to first gen students and giving back to MFOS. So it's really awesome getting to kind of have the full circle experience, because I was a student, I was an MFOS recipient, I was an ambassador to the program, so I was advocating while I was a student. Then I was a graduate assistant for the program, working for the program, and then I ended up serving on the board that's kind of like the leadership, and it's so interesting, because for me as a board member, I can talk about, well, you guys have these ideas, but as a student or as a young alumni now, I can tell you, this is how it was, or this is how it is, and I can kind of chip in to the ideas that they have. And then now we're actually starting sort of a young alumni council and I'll be a co-chair of that board, and that's basically going to be an extension of the leadership council, because I mentioned that I'm the youngest member. There's basically 2 MFOS alumni, including myself, that are on the board, and then the rest of it are folks who have been major donors and supporters. And so the purpose of this Young Alumni Council is basically to engage young alumni and help with communication, help with strategy, help with fundraising. And it'll be interesting because the program now has been around for almost 15 years. Mm-hmm. So we've got hundreds, actually over thousands of alumni. And so as that continues to grow, I think that this Young Alumni Council will be really cool, because we'll be able to kind of gather and have our own group, so that whenever homecoming and all that stuff kind of comes around, then we kind of have our own home away from home.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a new development in like the program. Do you have any like dreams or hopes of what you would like to see for MFOS like in the future? Any goals that you are like trying to work towards in your like leadership role?
So, I have hopes and aspirations, and what that translates into, we'll see with time. We're actually having our first meeting at the end of this month. So, kind of we'll be sitting down and getting to know each other virtually, of course, and really talking about what our goals as a board are going to look like. But for me personally, MFOS years ago was only 250 students, and then it grew to 300. So while I was on campus, it was 300, and then in my last year, it actually went from 300 to 350. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, it's 350 students every single year, right? So, it adds up. But that being said, there's thousands of students who that could reach. I met so many students on campus that said, "Oh, I qualified for it, but I didn't get it." Now, the reason for them not getting it, who knows? I'm sure it ranges from really technical things to maybe they just reached full capacity and couldn't take more people in. Really, I hope that one day that won't have to be the case. If you meet the criteria, then hopefully MFOS will have the funding and will have the capacity and the ability to take you in, because just like MFOS changed my college trajectory and career completely, I'd like for that to happen to as many students as possible. So that's really the number one goal. And second to that too is just raising awareness. You mentioned, right, you're on campus and you're a sophomore, but you hadn't heard of the MFOS program too much. And I think that that's one of the goals behind MFOS at this point. In the beginning, in the first few years, they were so busy really just focusing on the program itself that it's hard to step back and say, okay, we need to raise awareness about what we're doing here, because we're doing some really cool things. Now it's gotten to a point where it's a little bit of a well-oiled machine, and that's 100% due to the efforts of the folks who are leading the program. But I think that at this point, the university has also made MFOS a priority. So hopefully, the university, as well as young alumni, as well as leadership of the program, we will all be able to serve as better advocates of the program to continue raising awareness and telling folks, hey, we have some really cool stuff going on over here. You should support as well.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think hopefully this project that we're working on will kind of help work towards that. We're planning on doing like a documentary and a little mural. One of the questions actually for that is if you could describe your college experience and your experience with MFOS in like one word or like a short phrase, what would it be? And if you don't know right now, you can keep thinking about it. I just wanted to bring that up because that's something that we'll include in our project at the end.
Give me a few minutes.
No problem.
And let's see what I can come up with, because that's tough.
I know it is. It
Uh,
is. I wanted to bring it up before we like got to the
yeah.
very end. Um, so you've talked about the community support from MFOS. Did you experience any kind of support or community from US faculty? That's something we've kind of been hearing a little bit about. There's like seems to be two extremes, and
Yeah.
could they have done anything to support you more, or just done anything differently in your opinion?
So I think that I'm a little bit biased because I mentioned that I got really, really involved.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the privileges of becoming really involved is that you get to interact with folks that work in higher education, and you get to become close to them because you're programming events, and you're working with advisors and doing all these things that expose you more to other faculty members that probably most students don't get to experience. I sat on a handful of different committees, a couple that were presidential committees, other that were research committees, planning committees, and that exposed me to folks from so many different departments,
Mm-hmm.
health departments, agriculture departments, research departments, and so I was able to interact with so many folks. And when they learned a little bit more about why I was on that council, and the fact that I was MFOS, and that I served as a representative for a few different groups, then we got to interact so much. So yeah, I became close with a few folks, especially when I was in student government. We have a handful of advisors because we had a pretty substantial budget, and so we always have to be consulting folks and all of that before we made decisions. So I was able to get close with them. We also traveled with them. One of the folks that also sticks out to me is because I became so involved with MFOS, I spent a lot of time with the student affairs folks, and I got really close to a few of them. When I was a graduate assistant, Erica, who was one of the assistant directors, and even Leslie, who was the director of the program, and technically my boss's boss, we were all really close because I had known them for a few years. Funny story, I actually served on the hiring committee for Erica, who then ended up being my boss. So it was just experiences like that that I think that most students probably don't get, but I had a lot of support. I always had folks who I would be able to sit down with and talk about MFOS, about college, or even just about life in general. They were really good mentors to me, and really good sounding boards. And still to this day, even though I graduated a few years ago, I still keep up with a handful of them. I call them, I text them, I email them, especially around the holidays and all that stuff, because they were important folks to me then, and they're still important to me now.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask, if you're in touch with any of the people you were involved with, or is there anyone from your like MFOS cohort that you are still close with? Any lasting friendships or anything?
Yeah. So both of them, on the MFOS side, I mentioned my old boss, Erica. I talk to her all the time. Leslie, I talk to her all the time too, especially because I interact with her for the leadership council stuff, the alumni council stuff. And then the old vice president for student affairs, Dr. Parrott, he was someone that was there while I was there as well. And him and I just, from the moment that he stepped on campus, just got pretty close because we related to each other in our stories. So he became a mentor to me, but also just a really, really close friend. And then in terms of other students, because we had so many events that MFOS put on, I was able to meet so many other MFOS students. I was also the president of the Hispanic Student Association, which I'd say that a good percentage of our members were also MFOS. So, everybody knew me as being MFOS, and so they'd bring it up to me, and we would just connect about that. And still to this day, yeah, I keep up with a good amount of the MFOS folks, and you never really realize how many you know until, like, for example, giving day comes up. And then, I'm tagging folks on Facebook and sharing things to them and all that stuff. And I'm like, I haven't talked to you in like 8 months, but hey, we're both MFOS. Don't forget to support. A funny story, actually, my freshman year summer B roommate, who to this day is still one of my best friends, he was also MFOS.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to kind of have very similar experiences, go to the events together and all that stuff, which was nice, because it's always better to attend things when you know someone, because then it's easier to make other friends. But yeah, I keep up with a lot of the MFOS folks still.
That's really cool. Where's your room? This is just a question. Did you plan that for your roommate and you? Did you both know? Was it random?
No. So I actually didn't find out that I received MFOS until like a few weeks before Summer B started.
Oh, wow.
So I was one of the last ones. And no, I had no idea that he was MFOS. It was actually my friend who was at UF that I visited and convinced me to apply. I saw that him and I were that he was a mutual friend, and so I asked him. I was like, "Hey, do you know about this guy? I need to find a roommate." And he's like, "Oh yeah, he's a great kid, blah 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 blah." And so we ended up matching and got to talk and selected each other. But it wasn't until I basically started Summer B that we realized that we were both MFOS, because he had gotten the notification a long time ago. But I didn't find out until pretty late.
Yeah, that's really your friend who convinced you. He was making things happen.
I know. He still takes credit to this day.
Could you tell me about like receiving that letter, just how you felt, what that was like in general, because you just mentioned it was a little bit later. So yep. What was that like?
So when I first got notified that I qualified for it, it was tough because I got really excited, but I knew that it wasn't 100% guaranteed. So I didn't want to get my hopes up, but more than that, I didn't want to get my parents' hopes up. So I had to do my research, and then I had to sit down with them and kind of educate them. Hey, I qualify for this, but who knows? And my mom was like, no, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it. Being super hopeful, and I'm like, oh gosh. So when I did finally get it, I called them, and I mean, my mom just screamed on the phone of excitement, but then she was also crying some, because it was such a big weight that was lifted, not only off of my shoulders, but off of their shoulders. Knowing that I was going to be able to attend college and not have to worry about a dime, that was just a huge deal. So it was awesome. It was really, really nice. And I'll also never forget, after the fall semester started, and I got my first disbursement that included some aid for like textbooks and a couple other things. I put aside just a couple $100, and I sent them to my mom, and I was like, here, Mom, like go and enjoy a nice dinner with Dad. Just because I felt like everything that I was receiving was really just an effect of what my parents did for me. If it wouldn't have been for them and all of their sacrifices, then I wouldn't have been at UF. I wouldn't have been an MFOS student. So really, that was always my main driver.
Did you find yourself giving back to them pretty consistently through college, or was that something?
Well, I'd say that there was never the expectation. My both of my parents are extremely independent, and they've gone through a lot of things in their own life. So they always said, like, don't worry about us. We're just fine. But personally, yeah. I always wanted to make sure that if they needed anything, that I was there. And really, that was not only financially, but in terms of time, in terms of a lot of different things. I remember I was in class one time, and my dad called me and told me that their car had broken down, and that they were down by Tampa, and to tow a car from Tampa all the way to Ocala was going to be really, really expensive.
Yeah.
So I told him, I was like, don't worry, as soon as I get out of class, I'll drive down there and I hope you guys figure it out. And I did, right? And it wasn't, it was simply because I knew that they would do the same for me. And although I didn't have to worry about anything at school in terms of finances, I knew that I had a responsibility to my parents, even though I wasn't living at home anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's really special. That's kind of the relationship with my parents that I have. My mom was first gen and my dad didn't go, but I'm not because of her. And it's kind of the same experience a little bit, not fully because she went. But how would you, now that you've graduated, does your idea of being has it changed, your idea of being a first generation student? Like, what does it mean to you now?
Well, I'd say that the idea changed during the 5 years that I was at UF. In the beginning, I didn't really know what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, my folks haven't gone to college, but okay, so what? I'm first. That's not really. It's a big deal, but I don't really know what it fully means. As time progressed, I saw how there were certain things that I was just at a disadvantage. And it wasn't anyone's fault, but it did have to do with the fact that I was first gen. Right. Now sitting back as being a double graduate, I think that I wouldn't change a thing from when I was there, and now I'm such a huge advocate for programs that support first gen students, mm-hmm. And also telling the students themselves when you are first gen, it's really important that you own it. It's really important that you recognize how important that is in your story, because I always found there were some folks that didn't really want to recognize that they were first gen, or it just wasn't anything to them. Mm-hmm. And I always found myself kind of telling them, like, hey, I think that this is important not only for you, but for those that come after you, because it's important for us to get more support because we are first gen. It's important that we get recognition and really that we have a seat at the table, just like anyone else would. So yeah, first gen and its definition has changed for me a lot over, I'd say, what now, 7 years, because it was 5 years while I was a student, and it's been, oh gosh, almost 3 years since I've graduated.
That's so crazy. I can't even think about it.
Right? Stay in school as long as you can.
That's the plan. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add? Any one event that stuck out to you? Just anything you want to make sure we know about MFOS or your experience in general?
I'd say that MFOS has come a long way, and I can't even attest to how it was when it first started. But it's come a long way from when I first stepped on campus to today. And I think that it's important to recognize that it's due to the folks that are leading the program, but it's also due to the folks that are outside of the program that are recognizing how important it is, and that it's important for the university to recognize that, hey, we can contribute more to this, or we can do a better job at amplifying the effects of this program. So I'm really excited for what the MFOS program is going to look like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. Yeah. Because I'm sure that it's going to change drastically. It's really awesome to have someone like Leslie, who's the director of the program, be leading it, because she's not only passionate about the program, but she does research, and she really leads her team, and and just does such a good job at being a strategic person when it comes to the program, that really the program has just grown exponentially. So yeah, I'm really excited to be a little piece of the past, and I'm excited to be a little piece of the future of it as well, because so long as I can dedicate my time and resources to the program, then I'll continue to do it.
Okay. That's a really special outlook. I love to hear that. I've had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Pendleton, and she seems so great. She's so passionate. She's a big part of this like project that we're doing. So it's really interesting to hear both sides. Like as a student and then as an alum, you kind of have all the different outlooks on it, which is really interesting.
Yeah. It's really special. You know, I'll never forget my first meeting as a member of the leadership council. We were in Atlanta, and I was being introduced, and I told everyone, I was like, hey, I feel really privileged to be here. But more than that, my perspective has changed so much, and I thank them for their time and dedication. But I also told them, you know, I'm still a student. I'm about to be an alumni. I also just worked for the program, so this experience is just really, really full circle.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really cool feeling, because I remember when I was a freshman and I'd walk through campus and I'd see like certain flyers of like anything that has to do with MFOS or anything like that. I'm like, hey, I want to be that guy. I want to be the one that's helping champion this program and raise awareness and do all of that. So I always signed up for as many events as I could. I even remember, so the Hispanic Student Association works really closely with the Association of Hispanic Alumni. Mm-hmm. And the Association of Hispanic Alumni supports the MFOS program. So when I was a freshman, I found out that the Association of Hispanic Alumni hosts an event every year that's called the Gator Guayabera Guateque, or GGG for short. And GGG basically is like a celebratory gala. And they do like silent auctions, and it's just like a really, really cool event. And the purpose of it is to raise funds, and the majority of those funds go towards MFOS. But I found out that every year, 1 to 2 HSA students would go to GGG, and they'd give a speech, and they'd basically give a speech, you know, thanking them for their support and telling them a little bit about their story. So I emailed Leslie, who I had met maybe 2 or 3 times. And I said, hey, I know that we don't know each other that well, but I'm involved with HSA. I'd like to get more involved with HSA. And I know that you, through MFOS, send 1 to 2 HSA members down to the event in Miami, and I'd like to be one of them. And she was like, I mean, I'm sure that she was like, who is this kid? But for me, I really wanted to meet like HSA alumni, MFOS alumni, meet the folks who are supporting the program. And so the idea of that was just so exciting that I was sitting in class and I sent her an email, and she was like, yeah, why don't you come in and let's talk? And so I talked with her, and I ended up going to Miami to the event, and I gave a speech. Wow. And again, another full circle experience. I now sit on the board of AHA as one of the directors. So, you know, I have these like full circle experiences that are just so cool. Yeah. And I get to meet so many cool people along the way. So it's really fun, and I'm really privileged in that aspect.
Yeah, I'm sure you're still meeting the kids who are in MFOS now through those.
Yeah. I tell them, I'm like, hey, I remember when I was 19 and a freshman or a sophomore, and so, you know, I get to reminisce, and it makes me feel a little bit older, but not as removed, because I just try to stay relevant, you know.
Yeah. All right. I don't know. I don't have many more questions other than that one I asked before, is if you
Okay.
had one word
So
or a short phrase to describe your college experience or MFOS.
I would say transformational.
Okay.
That's my word, and I can give a 5 minute speech behind it, but I know that you said it's either a word or a phrase, so I'm just going to leave it at
Well, I would like to
transformational.
know the reasoning behind it.
I think that transformational speaks to the fact that MFOS just has an impact on so many different levels, financially, but also generationally, because if it wouldn't have been for MFOS, I wouldn't have gotten as involved. I wouldn't have met so many people, and it wouldn't have led to so many of the experiences that I had while I was a student. And ultimately, I've talked about these full circle experiences, and if you realize, the majority of these full circle experiences that I've had are because of MFOS. So it's something that leaves a ripple effect, because someone or multiple people donated to the program, both through their time and financially, and that led to someone selecting me as an MFOS scholar, and that led to me becoming a double gator, and that'll lead to me hopefully supporting other students and the program itself, and then that'll lead to hopefully my family attending UF and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. MFOS was really just that drop of water that really is transformational.
All right. That is a great answer. So I will keep you updated with how our project goes. I can send you if you're interested in that. I'm happy
Sure. Yeah, of course.
to keep you in the loop.
Yes, please do.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed speaking with you, hearing about all your full circle experiences.
Of course. Thank you. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's a really cool initiative. And I thank you as well for your time. This has been great.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to stop this recording.